All right, so welcome back. This is, as the sign says, Lecture 2 in the DHCP series. Okay, so in this section, I'm just going to talk about setting up the router as the router as a server. That's the general tool that it is. It's generally the router that ends up being a server. So we're going to consider that, and that will be our principal choice, and for right now, our only choice. So I'm going to set up the router. It's a few simple steps, few simple commands to implement the things that a landlord would implement in negotiating a lease and in a simple network. And so there's two ways. There's the router itself serves the network below it like it does in the DKI building, and the router needs to look for addresses in another network, so it needs to find a server someplace else. So let's get right to it then. Okay, so here we've got the choice. We're going to use a router as a server, and that's a typical choice. It's the case in the DKI building where the router in the back is that server, and all the clients are the various student desks around the building. All right, so in this we could say that we'll refer back to this picture, but you need to keep it in mind because it's just going to be a point of reference. So here's the server. We're going to choose R1 as the server, and it's going to be able to, it's principally working on this network over here, this 192.168.10 network. Okay, however that fans out. Now notice there's enough else of a network, of a wide area network here, that here's another, because the mask is only 24, this is the network. 11. This is the network up to 10. This is a different network, 192.168.30. Okay, so we'll be coming back to this picture now and then. All right, now to set that up, because we're going to try a couple of different ways here. To set up DHCP, you got to exclude addresses from the pool. So what's implied here is the first thing you got to do is you have to make the pool of addresses. In the DKI building, I've said this before, there's the 162, 122, 132 address pool that we have, and then we have 128 addresses in that, half of the 256 that would be available down at the bottom. So we have a 192, a 166, 122, 132, 0/25 is our mask. Okay, and further than that, we have certain dedicated static addresses. I've mentioned them several times: the racks in the back of the room, the printers, any scanners, that sort of thing. Those addresses are the ones that we're concerned about here by excluding them. We take them out of the pool. Kind of a funny way to start, but the pool is a network of addresses, a range of addresses that are given, and then we're going to start portioning out, and we exclude some. Then we give the pool a name. That's always handy. And then we use the network function to define the range of addresses. And you do that range with addresses and a subnet mask. Okay. Then we use a command. So these names in italics here that we've got, network, that's a command line interface that we're going to be executing on the router in privileged exec, right? Default router, got to be some default gateway. If you have a whole pool of dynamically assigned addresses, the hosts can't assume which one is, what address is the default gateway. So something has to be assigned, right? Just like when you're in the router, you have to assign that anyway. I'm sorry, if you're in a host, you have to assign a default gateway, And the router, even when we had static addressing, this is the case, right? Then there's some optional parameters you can include in the pool, like the DNS server, a domain name, the lease time. Okay, so we'll be looking at these things. And then if you have the router configured as a server and you change your mind, or you need to turn it off for a bit, the usual. We just do a no command, no service DHCP, right? So without the no, the service DHCP is going to be a turn on command. You're going to enable service. All right, here's an example from that. Notice where you're at in the command line here. These first three commands, you're just in config mode, right? So you're at the highest level when you are implementing this. So this is like you could put in an IP address command or send yourself to a port, a fast Ethernet port, some interface. But here you're at the highest level and you're defining something. You're saying, when I do DHCP addressing, I want to exclude these addresses, right? I want to exclude these addresses. So what are the addresses? It's a range. I'm excluding everything from 1 to 9. And this is virtually what we do in the DKI building, by the way. All right. Then I can come back and do another. So where are those? Those are all at the bottom end of a 256 address range, 256 element address range. Here's the next to the top address, and we're going to exclude that, and then it just gets named here. Okay, so these addresses are not in the pool. What does that mean? It means everything else is. Okay, and in that pool. And you say, well, what pool? All I did was exclude addresses. I didn't name them yet. Okay, so here we're going to do that down here. Oh, here's our network, 192.168.10.0. That's the network that these addresses are in. And it's so this is /24. Okay, so now this is basically saying my pool is equal to all of .10 except this stuff up here that I took out. So kind of interesting. You declare what's not there or not going to be there first, and then you declare the network. Now, why did that happen? Well, it's because up here, where am I at? Up here, I'm still up in the config mode. So I'm still basically declaring something about a range of addresses. Here I'm actually doing my DHCP thing, right? And that does not happen until I declare the pool. Now I say, here's the pool. Right, and this just said, when I make the pool, keep these addresses out of it. All right, so there's my network. Here's the router default, 10.1. And if you go back to that picture, which you can do in your text, you'll see that the G0000 interface is 0.1 on the .10 network, okay? It identifies, so now this is the extra information that can be passed around. So this is an offering, this is a setup that the server is being made to be a DHPA server. This is not an offering. This is just configuring the server. All right. Now it names, there's a DNS server, and it says, it's just saying, I got to name this because it's on another network. And you'll see in a moment why it would want to do that. And we'll give that a domain name, example.com. Okay, and then the end, that pulls us out of running config, out of config mode back to just privileged exec. Okay, so now let's move on and see. Let's see how we do this verifying, right? So that was all pretty easy to set it up. You just are working with the network, exclude some addresses, and then go ahead and declare the pool. Now we're going to say, how do I check on this? Our old favorites, show running config, and we can isolate real quickly by using the little bar that says jump right to the section that's about DHCP. Jump to that section, that's all I want to see. And then here's some others we can use. Show DHCP binding, show which ones are actually bound and shown. And then you can also go in and show statistics. Okay, now that's on the server side, that's on the router side. Here we are on the host side, so you can go to a PC. Let's say you're setting this up, like if we were in class, and you wanted to check. We've issued the IP config, we've issued this command a zillion times, and we get tons of, depending on which computer you're on, we get tons of sections like this. Well, here's the stuff specific to DHCP. Look, I gave it this address. This was the address that was assigned. Notice what that is, 10. That is the first address that's in the pool. 1 through 9 were excluded. This is the first address that's in the pool. The subnet mask remains the same, and now it's got a default gateway. That was specified. That was part of the definition of the pool. Okay? And then if servers are there, here was one that was declared. If you don't declare it, it isn't going to be there. This is the important thing. This was assigned. This information was all passed. If you go back to the last lecture, you'll see there were opportunities to pass this kind of information in the command. Okay? All right, so one other thing I want to touch on quickly in this brief is the idea of relaying. So what if the DHCP server is not the one immediately outside the network? So here's that, this is back to our original network picture, except now this guy is saying, our R1 is saying, I'm sorry, I can't be the server here for this. That server is down here in a different network. Okay? Now, how do I get this command, this broadcast, how do I get that broadcast over to this server so that he can get an address? Because right now this guy doesn't even have an address. There's no address here. He's saying, I need some server to give me an address. And this guy says, well, look, my problem is I cannot forward broadcasts. And the basis of DHCP is it starts with a broadcast message from the client. Okay, so how do I get this client's, where to go now? How do I get this client's request over here to the address server? Okay, and that's called relay mode. I want R1 to relay the request to an appropriate network. Okay, so here's what's going on with that. We have to add a helper address to enable the router to forward DHCP. That's called relaying. So as you can imagine, there's just a command that has to be issued. Now, where's the command going to lie? Where do I put this command, IP helper address, and then I name the address? Okay, I'm going to name the address. What's the address I'm gonna give it? I want to give it the address of that server. right? I'm not giving the client that. I'm not giving the client requesting it. I'm taking it and saying, where do I forward those broadcast requests? Okay? And so I just simply add this. Now I do it at an interface. So look at this. I'm in config mode. I got to get to interface G0. Now what interface is this for? This is for the 192.168.10 network. It's for that network. Okay? And it says if you guys on that network want an IP address, you got to get over here to this network and this address. That's the server that can help you. So it's a pretty simple setup, but notice it is interface driven or specific. This helper address doesn't apply to stuff coming in from another interface. If it comes in on that interface, shove it over to that network. Okay?